Louise Minchin is a well-known and respected broadcaster and journalist, and she presented the UK's most watched breakfast programme on BBC Breakfast for 20 years until just a couple of years ago. She's chair of the 2023 judging panel for the prestigious literary award, the Women's Prize for Fiction. That was a really good one this year. And this year, she's also published Fearless, which tells the stories of ordinary women who perform extraordinary feats of endurance and joins them on their incredible adventures. She's always willing to step out of her comfort zone, having competed in I'm a Celebrity Castle Season 2021, and possibly harder than facing bugs, snakes and spiders, completed 25 triathlons representing Great Britain in the World and European Championships. And when her daughters left for university, Louise was very vocal about the visceral loss, the empty nest syndrome that completely took you by surprise, really, didn't it? Welcome to the show.
Gosh, it really did. So take me that. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Listening to that, I feel exhausted listening to the things I've done. But yes, so when did my daughter leave? So she just graduated from uni and she did 4 years. So 4 years ago, this time 4 years ago, I was really extraordinarily unprepared for her leaving home. You know, I kind of knew she was going to uni and she wouldn't be here, but I had no concept and nobody talked about it. I think it's a sort of great hidden secret of parenthood that you are going to, well, personally, I missed her, as you say, in a really visceral way. It was like a sort of, I can only describe it as a sort of form of grieving suddenly. And it wasn't suddenly because I knew there was a huge, build up to it. She wasn't here anymore, but I didn't know how much her presence was part of my everyday well-being, actually. And there were these moments I'm sure lots of you can relate to where I'd walk past her room and she wouldn't be there. And it would just I felt really sad about it. And of course, I've learned an enormous amount now. So it's 4 years since then, and she's back today, and she's comes back often. And my other daughter is at uni, and guess what? She's going in a couple of weeks, and she will come back often. And that's what I've learned. You've got to go with a different kind of roller coaster, one where you are not in control as a parent anymore, because they choose as and when they're going to come back. Mine sometimes give me warning, sometimes don't. And I always say that you can't expect there to be any food in the fridge if you don't tell me, because we survive on what they think is empty air when they're not here. So, but I've learned a huge amount, and I've learned that, of course, that's not the end of the story, is it? They're going to come back, but it's just really different to how it is while you've been, taking them to school for all those years and having them, as your responsibility 24 hours a day.
Yeah, your whole routine changes, doesn't it? You're not, meeting with parents at the school gates, perhaps. You're not buying as much in your groceries. You don't have that established sense of, the routine and the noise. That's what struck me, was the quietness.
You talked about the routine, the loss of routine. Absolutely. That is a really, because it gives you a structure, doesn't it? Not just to your day. It gives you a structure to what you buy and where you go, and also, of course, to your holidays, lots of different things. And you're right. I mean, I don't live with, maybe I'm being really judgmental here and stereotypical that boys might be louder than girls. I don't know. But you're right. The quiet was also a thing. The silence in the house. I've learnt to embrace that and to enjoy that now. But there's big changes.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think it's very easy to assume that it's always the mothers that feel, this bereavement as their kids go. But I think it's really hard for dads too. And you don't see too many dads. I think Gordon Ramsay was very vocal about this, wasn't he? But dads don't get the spotlight thrown on them, do they? That they've lost their best mate. They've lost their, the person that they banter with over the supper table as well. I think it can be very hard. Was your husband quite affected?
I really genuinely do think less so than me, not because of anything really, just because he's a bit more self-contained. I think he's got, for example, the garden is his solace, and he'll go out there for hours. And I think he probably just thought, you know what I mean, he just can be there for hours, and he did more of that probably. So I'm not doing him disservice, but I think he did feel it, but not in the same kind of that visceral way that I did.
Now you have really been quite groundbreaking, getting the BBC to talk about menopause. Before sort of lots of, more vocal, but like Davina McCall and everybody started talking about it. You got it on the BBC. And now, one of the things that I think is very difficult for women is that this empty nest does tend to happen at about the same time we're experiencing menopause. So we're dealing with an awful lot of emotions. Would you say that made it harder, or how did it work for you?
Well, I sort of feel quite lucky in that it didn't happen at the same time. Luckily, I'd already been through my what I would call my highs, well, mostly lows with menopause, had been thankfully some years previous to that when she left. But that's not to say that, I mean, menopause, and you will have talked about it so much on the podcast, has so many both physical and psychological implications. And for me, the psychological implications, the sort of, I felt really anxious. I felt really uncomfortable in my own body. And, I was going through these sort of hormonal fluctuations at the same time as my eldest daughter, Mia. So that was hard. But yeah, I mean, the
Hmm.
thought of having to go through, both empty nest syndrome um, and also menopause at the same time is really, that would be very impactful, because you wouldn't be able to unpick which is which. Do you see what I mean? So it'd be very
You're
hard for
just
people to try
clashing
to manage
so
those two things at
much.
the same time. Yeah, yeah, that'd be
I
really
remember
hard. But
hearing
I
you
felt lucky
say
that, yeah,
about
menopause came
Mia. Oh,
first.
sorry. Well, I remember hearing you say about Mia going through a lot of teenage hormones at the same time as you were. Now that she's older, both your daughters, Mia and Scarlett, now that they're older, do they look at you as a role model, and are they really proud of you? Because you've not only did you get menopause talked about first on the BBC, but you've also fought for equality. I would love to have you as a mum. I think you're amazing, because you went for equal pay as your male co-presenters. And what I really loved, because I listened to a talk that you did earlier this year, and you did it through data. You didn't just do it like, oh,
Yeah.
come on now, I should be paid the same. When you took it to them, they said, no, I think you're imagining it. Don't be ridiculous. Like, well, actually, I've got my notebook here, and I can tell you exactly how many times my co-presenter led it and said hello first. You've left a legacy behind you, haven't you, at the BBC? How do you feel about that? That you fought so hard and you won?
That's so, yeah, thank you so much for saying that. And sometimes I'm a really naggy mum, so don't worry. You're well away from me. I'll be nagging you to go out for a run and do this and that. So, but the girls know that that's my happy place. So they're happy for me to go running. So, and Mia comes with me now. So yeah, with legacy, gosh, it's a big word, isn't it? And I feel that was really, to be honest with you, because I think when somebody said something really clever to me the other day about the battles you have to fight for are not on your own behalf. Those are the important ones to go into battle
Yeah,
for. And actually, that's what it was for me. It was important to me, but it was more important that I kind of put, hopefully, a marker in the sand, where it means that whoever presents breakfast now or in the future will get paid the same amount as the person who sits next to them,
hmm,
and and that they share the lead intro and they share the interviews and everything, that everything is, I would just want to see 50-50, or just, parity, or whatever it is, whatever you call it, fairness. And that for me was way more important, that when I left, it should carry on, than actually, because I think these battles, they're hard won and they leave you damaged. But actually, when you can see that it's more than about you, then actually that's really empowering and actually
totally.
made it all worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this last weekend that we had the US Open with Coco Gauff winning, and it's 50 years since the WTA, Billie Jean King, and her cohorts fought for equal pay. 50 years. And for you, it's
Yeah,
only a few
yeah.
years since the media caught up on equal pay. We're still fighting the fight, aren't we? To just for
Yeah,
equality,
and I think
really.
you have to you have to be really careful, because you don't want things to go backwards either, because sometimes, I know, for example, before on BBC Breakfast it was shared that, who would do the lead intro, etc., and then how did it get to going that it wasn't? I don't know. Do you sort of mean? So you always have to be very aware, I think,
Mm.
that you have this line in the sand, and let's move forward from it and make sure we don't go backwards from it. So yeah, things hopefully are changing, but we just need to keep our foot on the pedal. I think I'm not there with the pedal, with my foot on the pedal anymore, thankfully, but it's down to other people to keep doing that now.
Yeah. And as midlife women, by the way, of course, you can't be my mother because we're about the same age. I didn't mean it in that way whatsoever. But as midlife women, you're confident, you are fearless, as your book suggests. You do go on adventures, and you're clearly challenged, but not uncommon for women at our age to sort of lose our purpose, to feel a little bit irrelevant, perhaps. And Liz and I were talking about, when you get to midlife, and it's hard to re-establish boundaries and maybe dip your toe in the water. It's not necessarily climbing Everest or ice diving. Oh my God, we've got to get onto that because I'm still having a bit of a panic attack having read that. And be brave when it can be small steps, incremental perhaps.
Well, I think you've answered your own question, actually. It's
I think I just did.
Steps.
So I'm not sure I'm going to
you?
get a seat on the sofa at the BBC, am I? No.
But what you said is really important. Okay, so I don't. Let's take one of the examples. So I cycled with Mimi Anderson, by the way, who is over 60. She's an incredible endurance athlete, was an ultra runner, and now does incredible cycling adventures. And she's a grandmother. I think she's got 4 grandchildren. So she puts us all to shame, right? But so you can do things when you're older. And I came sort of late to sport. I only started when I was 45. I'm now just 55. But you don't cycle across Argentina like Mimi and I did by just getting you on your bike and cycling across Argentina. It's all about those small steps. And those small steps can feel scary, but every time you do something. So, for example, I've done Couch to 5K, which I think is a brilliant, it's an app and it's an absolutely brilliant. It holds your hand through literally sitting here on the sofa like I am now to running, hopefully after, I think it's 9 weeks, isn't it? Running at least 30 minutes, but hopefully 5K. Or more or less 5K, because I don't do 5K in 30 minutes, by the way. Now I take longer, so don't. And it's not about numbers, guys. By the way, it's not. So it's all about, I think, small steps. And so just start small. Start with. But the key to me, I think, is setting yourself a goal. So have something that you want to do. And it could be, let's take that 5K as an example. Maybe you've never been a runner. Maybe you've always fancied running. But there's so many things, the reasons why you don't want to. You don't know where to start. You think you're going to be exhausted. You think it's going to hurt. I'm just giving some of them coming to the top of my head. And probably you've got your own examples. But, set a goal, so it might be 5K. Find someone to go and do it with as well. Like, for example, you two together would make a great, awesome team to go and do something. Tell other people about it, because then they're expecting you to do it. And start slowly, but incremental steps. I started with, my triathlon. Well, I started with the bike ride on BBC Breakfast, where I'd never even been on a racing bike. And then, however many years, actually, it was only about 9 months later, I'm suddenly doing a triathlon. But, start small,
Incredible.
start small. Wow. Because the reason to do all of this is because I think, particularly at midlife and as women, I get so much confidence and strength from sport. And that is confidence really, it's like this virtuous circle, a confidence both in my psyche and my mentality and also in my body. My body is strong. And I also get that physical strength. I get out of bed in the morning and I feel stronger possibly now than I did when I started 10 years ago. So I'm stronger at 55 than I was at 45. And I think that's really important going forward for our physical well-being.
Yeah, we have a long time left these days. Midlife really does mean midlife, doesn't it? We're not looking at retiring at 60 and, just settling into a nice retirement with bingo. We've got many, many years that we should be active and use our brains and our bodies to do the most that we can in the time that we have. And you have. So let's take it to your book, because I'm not kidding. Liz and I, we were talking about a couple of the adventures that you have, and to tell our readers, Louise brought out a book in May this year, I think it was, called Fearless, and it's these extraordinary adventures with ordinary women. One of the things that you did was swimming to Alcatraz in San Francisco. And I was there just like 2 weeks ago, and I was looking at Alcatraz, having read this book, and I was like, that's quite a long way. And there are sharks in there. But what I do love is that you do your due diligence and you put it in perspective, and you said it was shark inhabited, not infested, which obviously makes all the difference in the world, right? Tell us about...
Yeah, I love that you've been there. So it's called Fearless Adventures with Extraordinary Women. You can buy it, by the way, in most good bookshops and also online, etc. Anyway, thank you very much for talking about it. It's been my passion for the last year and a half that I was researching and writing it. Alcatraz. So what I wanted to do in this book is I wanted to celebrate stories about brave, intrepid, courageous women, because I don't think we hear enough women's stories like that. You know, I know because I sat there on the sofa for 20 years interviewing incredibly brave, intrepid, courageous men. But I eventually thought, where are the women? The answer to the question is a lot of them, and there are so many more out there. You'll all know of one. We don't celebrate their stories, and there are lots of them in this book. Anyway, Alcatraz. So it was a swim from Alcatraz. I wanted to meet all these people and talk to them in their doing what they think is fun. And Mitali and Aya are two young girls. I think they were 19 and 21 when I met them, but they've done this swim, and you're right, it's all wrong. You say, we're going to do the swim from Alcatraz. You know, it's a prison that you can't escape from because there are very fast currents that will kill you. And if they don't, there are sharks that live there. Anyway, it's all wrong, isn't it? But I met these two young women. They've done that swim 75 times each. And it was, for me, I mean, I'm a swimmer. I love water. I love what I would call adventure swimming. Jumping off a ferry by Alcatraz, and then you've got this extraordinary view over Golden Gate Bridge and up to San Francisco. And, you know, we've seen San Francisco in the movies and we've seen Alcatraz in the movies, haven't we? But it's quite something else when you suddenly jumped off a ferry and you've got over a mile, whatever. I think it's about a mile and a half to swim. Anyway, I love being adventurous. I love being with people who are challenging themselves. And actually, to be honest with you, probably wasn't much of a challenge for them, but it was for me that day, definitely. And I think we learned so much from watching other people pushing their boundaries.
And well, I've got to ask you about the ice diving, that swimming under a metre of ice, which, but Liz and I were talking about. My heart was racing just reading about it.
I just think of that film, was it The Omen, when the boy goes under the ice?
Gosh, yes, good point.
That's all I could see when I was reading it. I was like, oh, that's all I could think of.
It's so claustrophobic, and God, I can't imagine. I mean, that is pure fear for me. And it was for you, actually, when you first went in, right?
Yeah, so I'll just quickly take people to... I was doing this with Kath Pendleton, who any of you... don't know if people will know her, but that's the point of the book. She's an ice swimmer. She's called the Merthyr Mermaid. She's got a Guinness World Record for swimming the southernmost mile in the Antarctic. So that's Kath. She is a tour de force. She's amazing. I phoned her up and said, I want you to be in the book. What should we do? She said, let's go free diving under ice. Free diving, for the uninitiated, is going underwater with no oxygen. So no, it's like scuba diving, but with no air. I mean, my idea of actually sort of brilliant, because I love swimming, I love going underwater, and I love scuba diving. So I thought the two together would be fantastic. Just note to everybody who's listening to this podcast, free diving is extremely dangerous. There is a danger of death. You never do it alone, and you always do it as a qualified free diver. So I am a qualified free diver now. I was not. So Kath and I go on this adventure, and the first free dive I did, not in a swimming pool, was in the dark under ice. I mean, how to tell the dial up on your fear factor by about 25 million. And as you say, you can. The trouble is, you can imagine it, and it makes you give. It's giving people anxiety dreams.
Makes me. I'd physically be sick.
Well, can you imagine? You'd be sick underwater. Why did you decide to do it at night?
Well, because
why not?
Kath and I, because we're busy midlife women. We were juggling children and jobs and whatever we were juggling, and we couldn't get there before dark. Anyway, so the first time I went in, it was utterly blew my mind, because it's pitch dark, it's freezing cold, obviously because there's ice. We were wearing wetsuits, but I got in, and the first thing I didn't realize was because you're buoyant because of your wetsuit and because of the air in your lungs, you push straight up against the ice. So I couldn't even swim at the first few seconds. Anyway, it was apart. I mean, and I know I really scare people in the book. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and also utterly brilliant. And I loathed and loved every second of it. And as soon as I came out of that, I got, because it's 15 meters long, came up, laughed, and did it again. But I do accept that that's not my next plan. That's a really good point. Oh yes, actually, I can't tell everybody mention much about it, but I think I did indicate to you two that I was being a bit busy this summer because I've been writing something else, which is super exciting. And of course, and it's soon actually, by the way. But the thing that I feel very excited about as a sort of midlife woman like you two is that I had a career which I absolutely loved, and I felt very lucky to be able to call time on it in the way that I want, that I chose to, etc. And then for 2 years, essentially, I've been writing, and it takes quite a thing to sort of change your career and what you call yourself. And I was walking in this weekend to Chiswick Book Festival, and I'm doing loads of book festivals over the next sort of month or so before Christmas for the book, and try and get sales out there, try and spread the message. So thank you for spreading the message. And I walked in going, I'm a writer, and that's so exciting. And I think it takes a massive pivot to do that and to call you. But I think when you start calling yourself something different, and it doesn't matter that other people don't call me that, but I'm a writer. I've got 2 books out already. And the most exciting thing for me about that is I've done 2 years of pretty much writing, and I still love it. And I think, thank goodness I still love it, because that must mean it's okay. It must mean that I can continue to do this, and, hopefully people buy this book and all the rest of it. But it's been very exciting. And I think we shouldn't, this has been a long-term plan. It's not like I suddenly wrote a book like that. I've thought about it for a long time. My last book came out 5 years ago or so. But I'm super excited. And I think we can do that even later in life. You could become a bridge player or something different that you haven't done before. A quizzer. I'm terrible at quizzes, by the way.
Podcast host.
A podcast host, exactly.
There you go. Look at that. There
so
you
basically,
go.
be fearless.
Well, and don't be afraid to. I mean, I think I feel lucky because don't be afraid to fall flat on your face. I think that's a lot of an inhibitor for people. They just think, oh, I'm going to look like a fool. You know what? Who cares? Who cares? You care, but don't worry. Don't let what you think other people are going to think, because you don't know what they're going to think anyway. Do you see what I mean? You're not in control of what they think or what they do. So just go, give it a go. And if you're not good at it, you'll find something else. But just keep trying stuff. I mean, I remember going on MasterChef, and my friends who know me were like, Louise, but you're really terrible at cooking. And I was like, yeah, I know that. So why don't tell me something I don't know. Exactly. The only way is to fail. And guess what? I was in the final because I didn't know. I was just like brave and tried it and didn't know what could go wrong. So look at you two. You're a podcast host now. It's fantastic.
And that's the thing, isn't it, about being fearless, being brave, that a byproduct of that is just gaining a bit of confidence back. And I think, going back to empty nest, if you can just gain a bit of confidence, try a new hobby, try a new thing, set a goal, as you said earlier, it is remarkable how an empty nest becomes a very full life in the end, doesn't it?
I think you make a really good point, and I think you've got to do that for yourself, because otherwise you're just going to end up, or I would have felt, just desperately sad. And I'm not saying I wasn't really sad on occasions, but you've got to build that. And also the only annoying thing is that empty nester is you've got to also have space. Not annoying, it's lovely. It's lovely. I love having them back. But you've got to be super flexible, haven't you? You've got to be super flexible and ready to go to.
Don't forget that we have our own lives
and get some food. Yeah, I know. It's been
Louise,
wonderful. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that everybody does feel that at some point you don't feel the grief so much, and you start reconnecting perhaps with your spouse, and you start trying new things, and you can be fearless, and you can buy Louise Minchin's book, Fearless, at all good bookstores and online. And I thank you for sharing your wisdom. You've been an absolute joy to talk to.
Well, so have you too. But listen, thank you very
we
much
need
indeed,
it.
and continue to do what you do, because it's fun, and I think, we need. Personally, I know I'm kind of relentlessly optimistic, but there is stuff out there for us all to go out and enjoy.
Oh, that is a t-shirt right there. Relentlessly optimistic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
Oh, well
Thanks
done,
so
guys.
much.
Thank you.